Welcome to Based in Fact, a true crime podcast. We're your hosts, Lisa O'Brien and Kyle Evans, and we are back after a brief hiatus during the summer and fall of 2025. This is episode 1 of season 5. I don't have a title for this one yet, as it's just going to be about what's been going on in the U.S. during our hiatus. We plan to talk about multiple topics, including the assassination of Charlie Kirk in September, the immigration enforcement actions and chaos in Minneapolis, alleged fraud in Minnesota, the shooting of Renee Good, and the notable people we've lost in 2025. And welcome back, Kyle. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, good afternoon, Lisa. How are you?
Pretty good. Life is starting to settle down.
Well, good.
Um, I had some changes though. My sister came back from Thibodeau. Um, I've changed jobs, so I had some disruption in the summer, and just needed to focus on all that, and didn't have the bandwidth to do my research and do all those things. So, but hopefully we're back,
Well,
and
good. Hope everything is well.
we're gonna have some good habits in season 5, and we're gonna stay on track. Or not. I don't know. So anyway, let's get to it. We have a lot of topics. One of the first ones that struck me was the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the distortion of his legacy and what he did by the media and by a lot of people, because we've gotten to a point in society where we can't talk to each other if we don't agree.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and
And
I
I
think
think,
it's,
oh, go ahead.
well, no, I think it's I mean, I think you mentioned like the media after his death, but I think it's this sort of kind of hysterical, overly emotional disinformation that has gotten people, artificially worked up over things, to a
Correct.
point where I think and for some of these people, they actually do believe it.
Hmm.
They actually do believe, some of the disinformation they're constantly fed.
Yeah. Because I know Charlie Kirk, that was one of the videos that would show up on my Facebook feeds all the time. And I watched him. And if you actually listen to him, he was not racist in any way, shape, or form. But he had values, and he was true to his values.
Well, and I
And there's
think that's
nothing wrong with that.
well, and I think why he was seen posed such a threat is because he was really making inroads into college campuses, which
Mhm.
is, you know, for many since the 60s at least has always kind of been owned by kind of the radical left. And I think they saw a real danger in how he was energizing young people. And well, that's the thing. I honestly didn't know that much about him before he was assassinated. But if you watch his videos, he is very polite and kind and just sort
Mhm.
of employs the Socratic method very effectively by asking questions. And that's what was so threatening because you could see all of the disinformation these people had been fed and stuff they believed
Right.
quickly fell away just with a few simple questions because they either couldn't answer them or they would get mad and call him a name and storm off.
Right. And yeah, and immediately lose. And that's another problem, is that, the side that tends to be the one to get mad and storm off and end relationships is the left.
Yeah,
I mean, you
yeah, it's
see people all the time. There, my father voted for Donald Trump. That bastard is dead to me.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's
really
like,
strange. And I think I don't know my theory. I'm certainly not alone and have thought this. I think especially among kind of the radical leftists, there's a decline in religion and religious values.
mhm,
And I think in many ways, religion has taken the place for them. And so they really approach it with this sort of old style religious fundamentalism, whether it was the Christian fundamentalism of the early 20th century, the Islamic fundamentalism of today, where you really view the world in terms of in groups and out groups. You're either with us or you're an infidel. And if you're
Right.
an infidel, i.e., you're not a radical leftist, then you're subhuman and deserve, anything that comes to you, you deserve it.
Mhm.
No
Us or
grace for
them.
the other side.
Yeah. Us or them. And I think and I really think Charlie Kirk was trying, and I think sometimes he did succeed in toning down some of the left
Absolutely.
ideology for, and then the other funny thing, kind of funny, people who posted ugly, ugly, horrible things when they faced accountability for that, then they cried.
Right, exactly.
Which is also, one of the funny things is people have begun to believe that you have a right to do whatever you want to do, and nobody can tell you anything, and everything is fine, and they can suck it if they don't like it. And that may be true to, for your family and your parents, but for a law enforcement officer, not. For an employer, no.
Right.
They don't. I really, I have to say this: participation trophies have eroded civilization in this country because everybody was told you're great, you can do anything you want to do, you don't have to answer to anybody, and here's a trophy.
Yep. Well, and that's part of that is, you know, I have friends that are in education and they see it a lot. Whereas, we'll date ourselves, but, back when we were growing up, one, there was corporal punishment, and that's a separate issue. We can discuss that separate on another time. But regardless of your views on that, if we got whipped at school for misbehaving, when you got home, you knew your dad was going to whip you twice as hard.
Uh-huh.
Today, parents have become defense attorneys. Whatever, you know, little Karen does at school, even if she's horrible, the first thing mom is come to defense attorney, and you're never going to take the side of the school, always take the side of the
Yeah.
kid, even if it's obvious that, she's a little terrorist.
Yeah. I had a friend stop teaching because there was this one year, this one child in her class, and he was a bully, and he was out of control, and she had multiple meetings with his family, and they always defended and threatened her. And then at one point, one of the parents, I believe this, she didn't say this, but I believe this is what happened. One of the parents put a mark on that child's arm and then tried to say she did it and accused her of abusing the child. Problem was, she's a little tiny person and she has little tiny childlike hands, and the mark on the child's arm was like an adult male. So it didn't work with the principal, but she stopped teaching after that because being accused was traumatic enough. And I think that's another thing too, is that a lot of people have become bullies. And I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely.
bullies, the protesters, they're bullies,
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
you know.
They're bullies and they're hateful. And I mean, that's the thing that you see that, I mean, that's what one of the kind of psychological subjects I'm kind of fascinated with, in my mind as I'm bored is sort of the self awareness that people, the lack thereof. And, you will see it's the people, and I'm stereotyping a little bit. I think generally the people that are more on the radical left, in their mind, they are compassionate, they are good people, they have
Mhm.
good intentions, they are the sweet, kind people. Yet the vitriol that comes out and the hatred, mocking Charlie Kirk, mocking his widow, mocking his children, mocking other people, like just that level of hatred, you rarely see on the right. I know we were going to talk about Rob Reiner, but Rob Reiner, a very vocal, very radical leftist, and when he passed away, I mean, other than the ridiculous, stupid, idiotic comment from President Trump, but you
Yeah.
know, most everyone he was amazing. Yeah, I disagreed with his politics, but man, I'm really sorry. How tragic. He worked really,
Mhm.
really hard to try to get his son on a straight path, and how tragic, to die
Yeah.
from your own son. I don't care that I thought he was a nut job, but I loved
Right.
his movies, and I'm really sad. What a horrible way to have to die, to be stabbed by your child. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. Yet, you
Mhm.
know, not all, but many on the left you know, were celebrating Charlie Kirk and mocking it. And in the sad coda of all of that is there's people. Is it like Jamie Lee Curtis? There's a couple of these, celebrities that have become, online political pundits who have now had to go back and apologize for saying nice things and grieving Charlie Kirk. They've had to go apologize
Mhm.
because, to your point, they've been bullied by the online mob because they said, "Hey, I disagreed with Charlie, but I'm really sorry this happened. This is horrible. I feel bad for his family and widow and his children." Now they've had to go back and apologize for having compassion.
Right. Exactly. And that is so true. I mean, I remember one of the first comments I saw after Rob Reiner's murder was from James Woods, who's very conservative. And he talked about him working with Rob Reiner, and I think it was Rob Reiner giving him a chance in something when his career was kind of, fizzling or just not going where it needed to go.
Right.
And you know, I don't think he even mentioned politics at all.
Yeah. Well, I think that, to your point about not being able to have a discussion, is I think it's hard because when you think about back to self awareness, a lot of these people, and it's a very Orwellian tactic, have redefined common terms into such a way that they can only meet. And what I mean by that is, I know people that would say, well, making fun of Charlie Kirk dying is actually compassionate and empathetic because he was a horrible racist person. I mean,
Right.
they've redefined the world in such a way to where only they are allowed to have what they consider positive virtues. Everyone that disagree with them commits a negative virtue
Mhm.
because there's no single objective truth or definition of a term, which is kind of the underscoring problem, post enlightenment philosophy coming to roost.
Yeah. And the other thing is, but Donald Trump, but Donald Trump. It, Trump derangement syndrome is real, people. Don't worry about what he does. If what he does is wrong, then don't do it yourself. Because they try to justify, in a lot of ways, they'll try to justify when they get called out on something. But Donald Trump said this, and Donald Trump said that.
Well, and it's fascinating
You're
too.
not
And
in kindergarten, honey. You're not
yeah,
in
well,
third grade. You're a
lots of
grown
rabbit
ass
holes.
woman
But
or
I
man.
mean, if you listen to people behind the scenes, so there's a book that I read back in the day that I loved it. It was called Kennedy and Nixon, and it really sort of contrasted the public and private personas of the two men, and they were honestly very different, And you
Mhm.
see a lot of that with politicians today, where, yes, I mean, no question, Trump says dumb stuff and acts sometimes like a jackass on social media or in interviews, but everything no one ever has a bad thing to say about him that's worked with him privately. They all say he's
Mhm.
gracious, he's kind, he really, cares about helping people. He treats everyone with respect. He's not, shockingly not a super egomaniac. And then you look at other politicians who maybe have positioned themselves on social media as these kind, empathetic, left-wing warriors. They're all terrorists to their staffs and to
Mhm.
people. I mean, there's a reason Kamala Harris staff turnover was like 91% every week because she was horrible, in private she was horrible, although she positioned herself as this kind, sweet, empathetic person. It's just interesting how, these public personas sometimes betray what is in someone's heart.
Yeah. All right. So we'll probably end up coming back to this topic a little bit more because it applies to later. Now we're going to talk about Operation Southern Spear, which I frankly did not know was the name of the operation. I just saw the hand wringing about Venezuelan drug boats being blown up and how wrong it was and how terrible. And then we also have arrested and brought former president of Venezuela, Maduro, to the U.S. to face drug charges. Um, that was pretty. I thought that was pretty awesome, actually. And everybody's like, "Oh, war with Venezuela." Their people are starving. The people actually hated Maduro, so I don't think anybody in Venezuela is really going to try to go to war for him. And it's Venezuela people. It's not China. It's not Russia. I don't think they
Yeah, like
have a
this is
great big
this is one of
military.
those yeah, like this is one of those issues you sort of have to just decide, and you got to pick a pretty extreme principle of foreign policy. Either America is going to just do its best to control the Western Hemisphere and control the world because it's in the best interest of America, and you just have to
Mhm.
live with the consequences, or you just have to say no, we don't want to interfere in, other governments' affairs. And personally, I kind of go back and forth, but
Yeah.
what triggers me is you'll see a theme, listeners, in my opinions. What really triggers me is hypocrisy and double standards. What's funny is, all the left-wing lunatics are going crazy, suddenly supporting dictators and kings in Venezuela, and also the fact that both Obama and Biden were kind of making fun of Trump for not doing anything about it. And a great meme, the Babylon Bee did a great, meme and said, Joe Biden embarrassed to have to give Trump a $25 million reward for capturing Maduro. I mean, like a year ago, they were making fun of Trump for being, I don't know, probably a Venezuelan puppet or not, cozying up to strongmen, and they always say.
Right.
And now he takes one out, and now all of a sudden they're apoplectic and they love kings and they love strongmen. So it's like
Mhm.
you got to pick a side, man.
Y
You keep changing depending on if Trump did it or not. That's not a way to have a political principle.
Well, this is I mean, I was not in the best place emotionally at the time, but I saw a Facebook post, uh, on June 14th, and that's also, I believe, Donald Trump's birthday. It's also the birthday of the US Army, and there was a big parade planned to celebrate that. I think it's like 250 years of the US Army. So I saw this post, and it was, of course, Trump derangement syndrome at the highest level, and it upset me so much that I unfriended the person, blocked them. And I usually wouldn't do that, even with people I disagree with. But I just couldn't. And my relationship in real life with that person changed because I'm like, I'm tired of this rhetoric and propaganda and BS. He wasn't throwing a party for himself on his birthday like he's a king. It was a party for the United States Army, of which your father was a member, and it's paying tribute to the United States Army. It just happens that it falls on the same day as his birthday because his birth it was also fucking Flag Day. I mean,
Yep.
you know,
Well, I
it's
mean,
like
yeah.
but that was my relationship with that person changed. And the relationship with that person ended because I just could not deal with that anymore.
Well, yeah, and I go back to my analogy. I think for a lot of them, it's their religion, and they're all kind of religious fundamentalists. Everything, the most important thing in their life, and what motivates them and gives them fulfillment is politics. And it's been expressed, the last, whatever, almost 10 years is basically a Trump derangement syndrome. And, my favorite example is I always remind my friends who have TDS, I'm like, can you guys explain this to me? Because, like, Trump is a Clintonian Democrat. Like, if you look at his policies,
Mhm.
he would have been the Democrat. He was always a Democrat until, 10 years ago. It's like his policies are the Democratic platform of 1992. It's like
Right.
America first, tariffs, the working class, the middle class. Like, that was a classic Democrat. Everything Trump is doing is out of a Democratic playbook pre Barack Obama. So it's
Mhm.
like, I don't understand why you're so mad at him when all these policies that he's pursuing is stuff you guys were for before Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, who was the biggest, if you go back to immigration traditionally, who was the most anti immigration? It was the Democrats. Why? Because they argued for 100 years that immigration lowered wages, cost middle class jobs.
Mhm.
They hated it. Who was all for immigration? The so called country club Chamber of Commerce Republicans, because they could get cheap labor. And I mean, you watch Joe Biden from the 80s. He hates immigration. You watch
Yeah.
Barack Obama on the campaign trail before he's elected. He's promising to deport and get rid of all illegal immigrants because the Democrats traditionally hated illegal immigration. So it's odd watching how Trump has just forces them to come up with completely new principles only because Trump has taken traditionally Democratic ones.
Yeah. Well, if you want to see a TDS sufferer's head really explode, remind them that the Democrats were the party of slavery and the
And the Ku
Republicans
Klux
were
Klan.
not. Yeah, and the Ku Klux Klan. So
I mean, the Ku
they get
Klux
really
Klan
bad
was
when
the
you tell them
Democrat
that.
Antifa 100 years ago.
Mhm. Which, by the way, anybody who has Netflix, limited series Death by Lightning, about the 20th president, James A. Garfield, who was assassinated 3 months into his term. Excellent, excellent series. It's
Really? Okay,
4
I'm gonna have to
episodes.
watch that. I love
Excellent. I
that kind of
watched it
history.
yesterday, and it was just it profiled both Garfield and his assassin, Charles Couteau. But it was an excellent, and it was so funny because my sister at one point was like, "Oh, it's 8 episodes," and I said, "Probably only 4," because it was toward the end of the 4th episode. I said, "Garfield's dead, Guiteau's dead, and they're telling us what, Chester Arthur and others did after." So I think this is the last episode. I wish they had brought it, out more, a little bit longer, because Garfield was a very simple guy from Ohio who basically stumbled into the presidency.
He was Harry Truman before Harry Truman.
Exactly. Yeah. So, all right. So, now we're going to move on to the Epstein files, which one of the interesting things about the Epstein files is it seems to me that the Biden administration had the Epstein files for like
But yeah,
4
I mean,
years and
no,
nobody said a
nothing
word.
nothing illustrates what we've been talking about more than the Epstein files. I mean, the Biden administration had them for 4 years, and they released Trump's taxes illegally.
Mhm.
They literally created laws in conjunction with state legislatures to launch lawfare against Trump. They coordinated with states attorney generals to launch lawfare against Trump. Like, this isn't disputed. Like, you literally can see the logs where Fannie Willis's boy toy was
Mhm.
at the White House billing.
Mhm.
You don't think if they had Trump in the Epstein files, they would have released them? I mean, come on. And the left wing radicals didn't care for 4 years. It was actually kind of the kooky conspiracy right that was claiming a huge cover
Mhm.
up. And then all of a sudden, now after 5 years, the left suddenly believes that Trump is covering up the. I mean, you can't make this up, Lisa.
Yeah.
You are completely disconnected from reality if you don't see the silly hypocrisy of the Epstein file hysteria.
Yeah, and I mean, apparently, Congress wanted to talk to Bill and Hillary Clinton about this, and they both said, "Nope, not doing it." So, um, and as I understand it, I've heard, I don't know this for a fact, but I've heard that Bill Clinton was friends with Epstein. Trump was friends with Epstein, but when he realized what a creepy dude he was, he banished him from Mar-a-Lago.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a reason of that that weird and funny picture of Bill Clinton in the Monica Lewinsky dress hung in
Mhm.
Epstein's house. It wasn't a picture of Trump.
Mhm. So,
And this is the hard part again. I'll get off my soapbox of hypocrisy, but I mean, one of the reasons, like, goes back to true crime. The left, I mean, a lot of people, this isn't really a political issue, but there's a lot of emphasis on protecting victims, not releasing victims' names, especially in sexual assault.
mhm,
Well, one of the reasons you can't just release these so-called Epstein files is because there's a lot of names in there. And so, do you want to release the name? Because my opinion is this: if you want to release them, awesome, release them all, unredacted, everything, the victims, the accusations, just release it all,
right.
or you got to be careful. And
Yeah.
then you also face a thing like Alan Dershowitz, who, now granted, he already had a target on his back because he defended Trump during one of his impeachments. And so all the lefties were already had canceled Dershowitz. But, he was in the files, but there's zero evidence that he ever did anything nefarious. And so it's
Mhm.
like, you could also have a lot of damage because somebody might be in the file who did nothing nefarious. But yeah, there's nothing that demonstrates political hypocrisy like the Epstein files.
Yeah. And in kind of a related, sort of related, um, it's not US, but over in the UK, Andrew is no longer a prince, and he's no longer got any of his royal titles, and he's just Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, and he's been kicked out of his home on the Windsor estate, and he's being put into a much smaller place in Sandringham.
Poor guy.
And he's got to pay for it, and
He's worked so
Fergie's got
hard
to
all
pay
his
for it.
life for his real estate holdings, and he just lost them. Poor guy.
Well, no, he never. But you see, he and Fergie had a pay to play scam going for several years.
Yeah, they've always seemed a
Fergie was
little.
living with him again.
Oh, he was.
Uh,
She was.
apparently, yeah.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
I thought she had become a successful businesswoman in her own right, but apparently not. But she was living with them, and they had another pay. They had a pay to play scam going, where if you wanted Andrew or you wanted Fergie, you had to pay. That's probably what gave Meghan Markle her ideas.
Yeah.
Um, and that didn't go over well. So, but but I would have to say in Andrew's defense, I think a lot of the allegations came from like the late 70s, early 80s, which was a different time. And the girls were probably like, "Ooh, Prince Andrew, he's so cute." Because I know when I was in England, I was 14 when I went to London. If I had run into Prince Andrew and he had shown the slightest bit of interest in me, I would have been thrilled.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, that's fair. Yeah, and a lot of these things, I mean, generally speaking, you're right. A lot of these things, they take a life of their own, and you can't really, it's kind of hard to say trial by media is it all. It's definitely not always
Mhm.
fair.
So, but and if there are allegations into the 90s, okay, yeah, now we're getting into creepy territory. And I've read some articles and things that, Andrew was not the shining star of that family by any stretch of the imagination. Um, but that's not the US, so we're gonna move on from that topic. Okay, another example of Trump derangement, the government shutdown and how it was all Trump's fault, even though he's not on the Senate floor voting for anything or about anything. So how is he controlling the government shutdown? Can anybody make this make sense to me?
Yeah, it's. I mean, again, I said the Epstein files, but this is another great example. Like you'll notice, I mean, you can go back and play the clips. Whenever there's a government shutdown, the left wing media, if there's a Republican president, they will always blame the president. If there's a
Mhm,
Republican Congress, they will always blame the Congress. I mean, you can go back ever since the very first one. It's never the Democrats' fault, even if the Democrats are, like in this instance, literally refusing to vote to reopen the government. They will
mhm,
always couch in some way because, again, they redefine, you know, the shutdown is, it's caused because Democrats don't get what they want. And that's the morally right thing to do. So the fact that
mhm.
Democrats don't get what they want, that means the Republicans are shutting it down. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But you can't reason with people.
No, not
It's
anymore.
impossible.
And I miss that because, like, John McCain and Ted Kennedy were great friends, even though they were polar opposites politically.
Well, yeah, and I
Uh,
mean, there's the famous example. I mean, even I mean, Ronald Reagan worked closely with Tip O'Neill. I mean, the problem
mhm,
is it's the government shutdown issue is really more of a dysfunction of Congress that Congress will not actually pass a budget.
right.
I mean, that's the core dysfunction, and the reason is because all of I won't say all, a lot of these Congress people are more interested in playing around on TikTok and doing TikTok and Instagram videos than actually legislating, and they don't want to
Mhm.
come up with a budget. They don't want to discuss tough issues and
Yeah,
vote. They're basically using Congress as a way to improve their social media presence instead of
right.
using social media to improve their efficacy as a congressperson.
And another uh, evidence of more evidence of the hypocrisy is when Texas redraws its districts, it's bad, but when California does it and New Mexico does it and Massachusetts does it, it's good.
Oh, of
Because,
course,
like, these are
absolutely.
states with like 20 and 40% Republicans, and yet they don't have a single representative.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a great point. I mean, because gerrymandering is one of those issues that the left loves until a Republican does it. Because if I guarantee you, I would make this bet 1,000 times. If I said, okay, Lisa, let's have AI draw congressional maps. And it is just going to go by population with some, we'll add some areas that, like, okay, ideally urban areas are, let's try not to break up urban areas. Like it'd be silly for big cities to have 15 representatives and, but let's just do population. The first people screaming would be the radical leftists because really, I mean, not originally with Elm and Jerry, but like the last 100 years, gerrymandering has been used by the left to create, minority, really African American
Mhm.
congressional districts. Like that's largely how gerrymandering has been used, is to guarantee a certain amount of African Americans are elected to Congress. They've loved gerrymandering. And then all of a sudden they don't because Republicans are doing what they've always done.
Right. And this brings us also to another topic because while they claim it doesn't happen, you got to wonder why they would protect illegal immigrants, especially those with extensive criminal records within the United States, and why would they would be so upset about immigration officials getting these people and getting them out of the country wherever they may find them. And there's a lot of fear mongering that goes on too from the left. because during the shutdown, people were going to die, people were going to starve. And, other than it being an inconvenience, I don't see where, there's any documented proof that anybody died or starved. Because I think most states managed to keep their programs afloat without federal funding.
I mean, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I mean, I've asked this before. It's like, just show me, give me the name of one person in the United States in the last 50 years who is starved to death because he or she could not secure food. I'm not talking, you know what I'm saying? I'm not talking about people confined, yada, yada. But like somebody out there who just starved to death because could not find anything to eat.
mhm.
You're not going to find anyone.
And there's a lot of I didn't really have this on the topic list, but there is a lot of fraud and abuse in the public assistance systems. I mean, I see people with carts full of high-end, high-value junk at the first of the month when their EBT money comes through.
Oh, absolutely.
And people, there were TikTok videos, people bragging about how they spent thousands of dollars and, you know, look at what they got and they're eating better than people with jobs.
I mean, I think we're the only country in the world who's so, low class citizens are morbidly obese
Mhm.
on average, lots of overweight poor people, and then it's actually your folks that are, wealthier that are more in shape. I mean, it's not like we have. I mean, you walk around Walmart, you can see a lot of folks in lower income brackets who are morbidly obese. And yes,
Mm,
our food isn't great, but again, they're not starving.
mhm. All right. So yeah, and that comes back to the alleged fraud in Minnesota with daycares that don't have any kids and get millions of dollars. And um, that one is just, and how that could go on.
Well, yeah, I think it could go on because I think there's this sort of unspoken or largely spoken reality that there has always been this sort of money laundering scheme, which, I mean, there's no coincidence that of all of Trump's early initiatives, the one that got the radical left the most hair on fire was the Doge cuts. Because
Mhm.
I think there's always been this, overt or covert sort of money laundering scheme where the government gives out tons of quote unquote grants, taxpayer dollars to these NGOs. And those NGOs basically use that money to deploy Democratic Party assets in communities. Was Barack Obama the community organizer who was paying for that? Well, a lot of it was your tax dollars because, oh, I
Mhm.
work for this homeless mission. And yes, I do some work for homeless, but I also do a ton of community organizing. And what does that mean? That means vote Democratic. But yeah, I don't think they care. The frauds, it's not, what do they say? It's, fraud's not, a bug, it's a feature. I mean, the whole system is designed for fraud.
Yeah.
And
So,
if you're on the left, that should make you the most mad, right? Because you want all those dollars to go to poor kids and people that are supposedly starving. Instead, those dollars are going to fund Somali terrorists overseas.
yeah. And that yeah, that is, and then they're all the studies are they're all on welfare, but live in really nice houses
Right,
because they're getting assistance for housing as well.
right,
Um,
absolutely.
so, but yeah,
Well, yeah,
that's
I saw a
something.
funny meme. It was like, of all the percentage of the Somalis that were unemployed, on welfare, and getting assistance, why would they need so many daycares? Because wouldn't the parents be home?
Hmm. Yeah. Um, well, you see some of those too. Some states, like if I say I'm going to take care of my nephew, the state will pay me
Right.
if my niece is on public assistance.
Right.
So, and there was a case on Judge Judy where like two sisters each were taking care of the other's kids to get the
Right.
state money,
Of course. Absolutely.
So I think it was like it was either Judge Judy or People's Court. But anyway, and now we move on to the Renee Good shooting, and this is a byproduct of the protests of ICE immigration enforcement in Minneapolis. Um, Renee Good was a woman with 3 children. Apparently, she did not have custody of 2 of those children. The father of, I think, her youngest child died recently within the last couple years. And of course, there was a lot of misinformation surrounding her death. And there are a couple people that double down and continue to spread misinformation, like she just dropped her kid off at school and then ran into this ICE situation and they shot her. Well, that's not what happened. She and her girlfriend, because they're not legally married, were members of an ICE watch group. There are people that are doxing ICE agents. Like, that's another thing, the hypocrisy, because when you look at the protesters, what are they doing? They're all wearing masks. But they get their panties in a wad because ICE agents who have been doxxed, who have had their photographs taken and spread on social media, are now wearing masks. And that's wrong and
Yeah, I
illegal.
mean, that's a great point because the mask thing is such a weird talking point because, again, Antifa during the summer of love in 2020, when they were burning, looting, and murdering, were all wearing masks. And even the anti Jewish protest on college campuses, consistent theme, all of the, you know, folks protesting Jewish kids at school were all what, wearing masks. So the anti-mask thing is just such an odd 180.
It's evidence of the hypocrisy. If you're protesting, why don't you want to show your face? If your protest is right or on the side of good, why would you not want to show your face? Could it be
Yeah,
because you're
absolutely.
committing illegal acts and you don't want to be held accountable? Probably. Um, and again, the ICE wearing masks is a reaction to the methods of the protesters. But anyway, so Renee Good parks her car obstructing a street, and then ICE vehicles cannot get past her car. And what does she do? She sits in her car and she blows her horn and she dances to her horn music because this is somehow a good idea. She's committing a crime, by the way, actively committing a crime because there is a law against impeding ICE enforcement or any federal law enforcement action. Um, so then her so-called wife, girlfriend, is outside the car videotaping and bullying an ICE agent, um, and being a bully. And like, honey, you don't have a lot of room to talk. If we want to go back to the playground, he's got some stuff he could say about you too. But okay. So out of her car, she backs up, turns the wheel, and floors it. And the agent who was in the wrong place, at, as a result of her backing the car up and moving it, uh, he defends himself and shoots her. And they claim 3 times in the face, but it was actually like 2 in the torso and 1 in the head and 1 in the neck, I think. But he was defending himself. she was committing a crime. She was using her vehicle as a weapon. And you can claim, oh, she was confused. She thought they were telling her to leave. They were telling her to get out of the car, and it's very clear on the video. And thank God there's video of it, even though they don't wear body cams. And I do kind of disagree um, with the policy that they don't wear body cams. I'm kind of on the side of let's put them in body cams so that they can show the foolishness and idiotic behavior of these protesters.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like if you're a law enforcement officer, you would like the body cam because, you know,
I
you, it just provides a record that
well,
no one can, smear what happened.
I don't know why. I mean, it could be just that Homeland Security has not invested in the equipment and the technology. It may be that their gear is not conducive to body cams. I don't know.
Yeah, I
I,
definitely don't know.
but but anyway, I think that that's something that Homeland should maybe reassess given a lot of these arrests. Um and the fact that you don't want the protesters to be the only ones with cameras because there have been a lot of officer encounters where a portion of the encounter is posted on social media
Right.
and people believe the cops were in the wrong and then the body camera goes up and you see everything that happened from beginning to end.
Well, yeah, and I mean, related, and I think this actually might have been under early Joe Biden. Like, it's a great example if you remember what you said, the infamous, you remember there was like a week of national hysterics and histrionics because the Border Patrol agent in Texas was whipping the Haitian migrants with his reins. And that was the story that you know,
Uh-huh.
ABC, CBS, The View, they all told us that we should all be outraged because this, cowboy was whipping a Haitian migrant with his reins. And then, of course, like much of the, disinformation over time, we found out that was completely untrue. But I don't know if it was AP or Reuters had sort of, used a picture that seemed to show it if you saw it from that angle, and they just ran with the narrative and never said, no, no, actually, he wasn't at all.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's a good point. I agree with exactly what you're saying.
So, but in the end, it's a shame that she put herself in that position too because she doesn't live in that area. She wasn't dropping a child off at school. She got an alert that they were going to be in that area, and apparently they'd been following them all day.
Well, and
So,
my thing is, it's like it is hard to get into the technicalities of the actual incident, but
mhm,
I think what I'm most is fascinating to me about it is because back to my theme on Tuesday, which was January the 6th, much of the left wing Facebook, bullies were making fun of Ashley Babbitt, who was killed by a Capitol police officer on January 6th, 2020, or 21, I think, and praising federal law enforcement as these just hardworking,
oh, there you are.
impeccable public servants, and that how could anyone talk bad about federal law enforcement who give their lives for us? And they were making fun of Ashley Babbitt, and then literally 24 hours later, these same people are, making a saint of Renee Good and
Mhm,
demonizing federal law enforcement. And in reality, the situations were remarkably similar.
right.
And so it's amazing one can see the world through such tribal lens where they have just such polarized reaction depending on the t-shirt of, whoever's cheering.
Mhm, yeah. But anyway, I think people should look at Renee Good and learn, play stupid games, win stupid prizes, or
Well, and something
FAFO.
well, and something you said earlier that again goes to just how robust the disinformation campaigns are. And I've tried to explain this to my friends that it's like I don't say maybe support Trump as much as I just really get annoyed by your disinformation. It's like, why do
Yeah.
we have to create the fake narrative that she was just simply driving to school, took a wrong turn, ended up in an ICE raid, and she got killed? Like that's
Mhm.
literally like like I, it's so fake that it actually makes me frustrated because it's like, just be honest. Yes, she's a professional paid anti-ICE protester. There's, it's not even questioned. She was part of a group. She went there to interfere with ICE operations and be a bully.
Mhm.
You can argue whether or not about the shooting, but like, why do we have to create all this disinformation around people? And we see it all the time, from, George Floyd to Juicy Smalls to, Michael Brown. Like, let's just be honest. You don't see the right, claiming that Ashley Babbitt was just, on family vacation in DC and happened to
Yeah.
walk into the Capitol. Like, you don't see the right in making up this kind of, disinformation.
Right. All right. So, National Guard deployment in U.S. cities, high crime cities. They deployed in D.C., were very successful. Unfortunately, then they were attacked. Two of them were attacked by someone who drove apparently a great distance to go to DC and kill National Guard troops. That was very, and unfortunately, I didn't read up on that. So the guards woman and the guardsman who were attacked, I don't have their names on the top of my head, and I apologize for that. But I don't have the killer's name either, so it's even.
Well,
Um,
and it's the pattern. I mean, remember when Biden was president, what were we told by Merrick Garland? That the biggest domestic terrorists in the United States were Christians and Catholics who went to Latin Mass, and school board parents who didn't want their young daughters to have to shower with boys. Those were the biggest domestic terrorists.
mhm,
Yet we've seen, from National Guard shootings to assassination attempts on Trump to Charlie Kirk to, the ICE, the guy that tried to kill ICE agents in Dallas and accidentally shot three, illegal immigrants. All the terrorism is coming from all the
right.
political violence is only coming from one side of the aisle.
Yeah. And and actually, I mean, in Memphis, people were actually happy to see uh, some assistance for their law enforcement. And I think they've deployed in New Orleans
Well, I think the
as
local
well.
people were
And it was,
happy. It's the
yeah,
politicians it's the rich white women who live in their gated communities who are throwing a fit about it. But,
yeah,
the folks that have to live in crime ridden neighborhoods, why wouldn't you like more law
hmm,
enforcement?
yeah. So, yeah, but I think I thought it was a good thing. And again, I mean, I didn't vote for the man either, but he could cure cancer. He could fund a remedy, a cure, and give it free to everyone in the world. And the people with TDS would say he's depriving cancer of a chance to grow.
I like
It
that.
and
That's
it
a
would
good.
be wrong. It would be bad. The left
Oh
would
no,
be
absolutely.
out, or they would lie and say he's charging people a dose is upwards of $5,000 for a single dose. You go in for your chemo, that's $5,000. And I've always said healthcare is not insurance. People complaining about health insurance premiums, going skyrocketing. Health insurance is not health care. Healthcare is a hospital cannot charge you $25,000 to be in one of their hospital rooms overnight,
Right.
especially when they claim they're a nonprofit or not-for-profit hospital.
Right.
Um, that a dose of chemo drug should not cost $5,000.
Yeah.
Uh, I switched insurance and now I'm having to pay for my medications where I didn't have to pay for any of them before. And I had one that I refilled when I had a gap in insurance coverage that was going to be $400 for a 90-day supply.
Yeah. And I mean, healthcare is another
And that's a
seven.
generic drug.
Yeah, that's another 7 hour,
Yeah.
discussion. But I mean, the thing is, I mean, if I would encourage people that are listening to this podcast and I'm throwing out different ideas that I don't hear mentioned a lot. But if you're listening and you're curious, go do an online search about what healthcare providers, meaning doctors, nurses, make in the United States versus what their commensurate job titles make in other countries. Is
Mhm.
that the only problem? Absolutely not. But is it a thing that it's the third rail that no one wants to touch?
Mhm.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a law, it's very complicated, and there's a lot of costs in the system that, other countries, push out. I mean, there's a reason folks go to Mexico for some elective surgeries, and that's because, your surgeon in Mexico's, maybe making $25,000 a year, where
Yeah.
that person in the United States is probably making, $10 million a year. Is that the only cost?
And
Absolutely not. But it's a piece of the puzzle no one wants to talk
and
about.
your insurance company won't pay for that surgery,
Exactly.
even though you pay them premiums, you know.
Well, and that's the biggest thing about kind of the Obamacare subsidies. People tend to act like those COVID related subsidies that Biden put in went to people. No, all the 1.5 trillion dollars in Obamacare subsidies, where did that go? That went straight to the insurance companies. So you think they took that money and lowered costs? No, they're like, great, we have more money. We'll just increase I mean, every time government gets involved with regulating something, college education is a great example, the cost to the end user skyrocket.
Mhm. Yeah. And, insurance is ridiculous. I had an ultrasound for my cardiac by my cardiologist. 7 months later, I get a letter. I didn't need it. The insurance company's not going to pay for it. They've reversed the money, and now I owe the hospital the money for the
Yep.
ultrasound because they decided I didn't need it 7 months later, not before I had it done. If they told me you don't need it before I had it done, I would have told my doctor, hey, my insurance company says I don't need it. I had one 2 years ago, whatever. But they didn't tell me. They approved it. I paid my part, had it done, and 7 months later they changed their minds. So yeah, there's a and what Luke Mangione did was wrong, 100%. But I can kind of understand where he may have been coming from because it is, and it like you said, the end user is the one that gets screwed. And I'm paying a premium. I'm paying this insurance company for this insurance. It's not like it's a government program where I'm not paying. It doesn't cost me anything. All right. So anyway, enough of that. Murders of Rob and Michelle Reiner. Uh, it was crazy because I mean Rob Reiner. I remember him from All in the Family. Um, I liked a lot of his movies, but hadn't seen all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I said earlier, I mean, there's a lot of horrible things that can happen to a person but I
Mhm.
can imagine getting murdered by knife by your only son.
Yeah.
It's got to be up there and just one of the worst things to have to happen. Like I mean, your last memory on earth as a human being is your only son. Did he? Was he? Maybe he had a. I can't remember. I know he had a daughter.
He
Regardless,
has, I think, 2 daughters, and he did have 1 son, and
okay,
the one son has had, mental health
yeah, but
issues.
regardless, your child murdering you with a knife is the last thing that you remember as a human being is
Mhm.
got to be pretty awful. I would
Yeah,
not wish that on anyone.
yeah. So,
And apparently, I mean, I didn't know anything about this kid, but apparently he had tried a lot of different things, really tried to help him, tried tough love, tried soft love. I think they did a movie together that the kid
mhm.
wrote, basically like an autobiography that Rob produced. And I mean, it's terrible.
I kind of that's another thing is that particular generation, they're so unhappy, and I don't think they even know why. But there's also a sense of entitlement among a lot
Yeah.
of them.
Well, yeah, I
So,
mean, you
they're very
see that.
unhappy, and it's everybody's fault but theirs.
Well, I mean, you see that. I mean, I mean, I'm sure you could point to 1,000 examples of someone's that bored, but I mean, so many of these ultra wealthy celebrity kids are not, they never turn out to be like well functioning,
Mhm.
normal people. And I
Yeah.
mean, Rob, I remember somebody said because apparently I don't know anything about Rob Reiner other than that he was Meathead and directed a lot of awesome movies, but like his dad apparently was very famous. And so
Mhm. Carl
ironically,
Reiner.
he grew up, like his own kids did, maybe to a different degree, but he grew up child of a famous dad, lots of pressure. And, he was able to successfully navigate that and, turn that, Nepo baby into a really great, career. But,
But
his
I
poor
think
son just,
Carl Reiner's generation, they pushed those kids out of the nest,
yeah,
and they didn't help them. Whatever Rob Reiner had, I think he did all of that on his own. His father did not give him a leg up at any point in his career. What he got from his own merit. I mean, from a meritocracy, not, being funded by his parents and his dad putting in a good word. I mean, Carl Reiner he was on the Dick Van Dyke Show. He was a famous comedian, um, and I think a good guy. But I think, Rob Reiner was also morally grounded,
yep.
and I think the daughters are, and just Nick was not. But
Yeah, I think something was definitely wrong with him. Yeah, because the other kids seemed to be pretty well adjusted.
mhm, so all right, and now in our last few minutes, we're gonna do our in memoriam segment and some of the really ones that hit me when I heard about them. And the first one of that group is Ozzy Osbourne. He died in what, October, November? Do you remember when it was?
That sounds right. I'll trust you though. I
Yeah,
definitely don't.
I don't remember exactly
But I'll
when,
trust
but
you.
he had just done that Black Sabbath reunion concert in Birmingham and, done so well and had impressed so many people. He had been battling Parkinson's for a decade, probably even before that. But, when I heard he had passed away, it was just like, "No, this is horrible, no." So Prince
Well,
of
I'm sure
Darkness
somebody
is
can find another example, but like I'm not sure anybody has had just such a funnier like career juxtaposition than him. I mean, going from the poster child for satanic panic in the 80s and biting the head off the bat to
yeah,
having he kind of had a decent career in the 90s and then kind of was not super relevant and then just become the Osbournes. The reality show was just so crazy,
right.
and how popular it was. It's just so funny
I
how
think a lot of
I don't
that
even
was
think he
Sharon,
reinvented
though.
himself. It was just seeing him in two different environments.
I think that was Sharon.
Oh, a hundred
I think
percent.
Sharon reinvented him
Well,
to
yeah, because I think
kinda
if I
keep him.
recall, he was
Yeah,
basically about to OD and die in a ditch when he
yeah,
married Sharon, and she basically turned his entire life around and reinvented his post Black Sabbath solo career.
yeah. And then Ace Frehley, guitarist for Kiss,
Space
again,
Ace.
Space Ace. I never realized how wild he was.
Yes.
I found a video on YouTube of an interview with Tom Snyder, and Ace just took it over and was loud, and you could see Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley just fuming because
Yeah,
every time they
if
tried
you
to
get kicked
talk,
out of
Ace
Kiss
would
for
take
being too out
over.
of control, then you're Spinal Tap level.
Yeah. Well, no, I think they just kinda drifted apart. Um, but I think a lot of it was, Peter and Ace did resent Paul and Gene's attempts to try and control everything.
Yeah.
And so I think they drifted apart. I don't I don't know that he was necessarily kicked out. But they drifted apart, and then Peter Paul and Gene did a reconstitution, and without Peter and Ace.
Yep.
And it's so sad because he probably, more likely than not, was misdiagnosed when he initially injured himself because he apparently fell and struck the back of his head, and he was um, misdiagnosed and released, but he probably had some bleeding, and then had another fall, and that ended up being fatal. So that's really sad. Um, but and he was hilarious, and he was wild. But as a kid, I always thought he was like the quiet one. How wrong I was. Um, I ended up watching, like, Midnight Special was a great show. You're too young to remember it probably, but it was on Saturday night after Saturday Night Live on NBC, and they had all kinds of musical bands and live performances, and it was really good. Anyway, okay, well, back on topic. Robert Redford, who had a stellar movie career as an actor and as a director, producer. Um, he had lived a long, long, long life. So, um, but it was a shock because you usually hear there's a disease or something, they're not well, and then they're gone and it's okay. But this one was like Robert Redford died. What the hell? What happened? Diane Keaton, same thing. A lot of iconic movies for her. Annie Hall, and she was a person who was always herself
Mm-hmm.
in every role. Graham Greene, who was also, I loved him. He was in Dances with Wolves. He was um, a native actor who brought uh, authenticity to native roles. Of course, he played many different types of
Mm-hmm.
indigenous people. Um, and then Jane Goodall. Anybody who's watched Chip Eden, She was amazing. She was in her 90s, and someone who really put the welfare of animals ahead of celebrity or ratings, or when it became detrimental to be filming the chimps at Chimp Eden, it stopped.
Right.
And then finally, Dick Cheney, vice president under George H.W. Bush, or George Bush. uh, I can't remember which Bush it was. Was it
It was
little?
both. He was Secretary of Defense
Okay, under
under George
H.W.
Bush, and he led the Iraq War, and then he was vice president under George
Okay,
H.W. Bush.
okay.
And he's
See,
another one of those who, last thing I'll say on our theme for the day, if you remember, he was vindicated. They called him Darth Cheney. He was, war criminal, public enemy number one. They made a whole movie mocking him and his
mhm,
life. And then as soon as Liz Cheney got TDS, he and Liz Cheney became a left wing hero
mhm.
only because, Trump again,
Yeah,
as a cow was, being an ass and, saying rude things about her dad. But like as soon as Trump started to not like him, again, this guy who was literally the most evil man in the history of the world, literally Hitler, overnight
yeah,
because he said a bad thing about Trump, became a leftist hero.
yeah.
It's crazy.
And yeah, on that note, I just have to say that shit needs to stop. Um, People who are claiming ICE are Nazis or racists or whatever, they have no clue what they're talking about. It's just like, um, it pisses me off so much, because that is the problem with why we can't speak to each other when we have differences
Right.
politically. Because you want to label everybody as Nazis and subhuman, because you want people to hate them and
Exactly.
to feel it's okay to be violent toward them, when you're actually the fascist, because it's fascists who try to control. And who has control of the media? The Democrats, not Republicans, not Trump. So that needs to stop. People need to stop putting that label on anybody they disagree with, because it shows just how little you know what you're talking about. Just like when the US Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, and people said, oh, it's going to be like Handmaid's Tale. No, it's not going to be like Handmaid's Tale. Handmaid's Tale is fertile women being enslaved to bear children for the politically powerful in the society. In That is not anything like a woman who doesn't use protection and gets pregnant and doesn't want to have a baby not being able to have an abortion.
Yeah, of course.
Totally different, because her actions are her own. And in Handmaid's Tale, they're not.
Well, and I'll repeat what I said earlier, kind of the lack of self-awareness. These are the people
Mhm.
that consider themselves kind and compassionate and empathetic and well-intentioned.
Yeah.
Well,
And
if you believe terms like racist and Nazi are bad, calling everyone that disagrees with you a racist, Nazi, sexist, transphobic, Islamophobic, that's not very kind and empathetic. That's actually pretty mean spirited and bullying. So you
yeah,
guys just need to come to terms with who you are.
yeah. And that's another thing. It's like they claim to be so intelligent and so educated, and yet their behavior te shows that to be a lie.
Right.
You're not educated, you're indoctrinated.
Exactly.
So, all right. Well, I think that is going to uh, put a pin in that one. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. We hope
Happy
you
New Year,
continue joining us.
everyone, and have
Happy
a
New Year.
wonderful year.
Yeah, hopefully 2026 will not be a dumpster fire. Uh, Thank you for listening to Based in Fact, a true crime podcast with Lisa O'Brien and Kyle Evans. If you like the show and want to know more, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, find us on Facebook, or follow me on Twitter at O'Brien LN. Kyle and I will return in 2 weeks for episode 2, State of Delaware versus Thomas Capano. On June 27, 1996, Anne Marie Fahey, the scheduling secretary for Governor Thomas Carper, went to dinner with Thomas Capano, a local attorney and the son of a prominent real estate developer in Wilmington, Delaware. This was the last time anyone saw Anne Marie alive. In 1997, Capano's brother Jerry admitted that he'd helped his brother dump Anne Marie's body in the Atlantic Ocean. We'll talk about the case against Capano, his trial, direct appeal, and post conviction claims, including the commutation of his death sentence and his death on September 19th, 2011. Until then, have a great 2 weeks and stay safe.